Okay, welcome back to Strength Coach Tutorials. And in today's tutorial, we're going to finish off this set and rep planning tool that we've been working on through Strength Coach Tutorials number 36 and 37. And for today, all that we have left to finish off is we're going to pull all the data into our little outline here that's going to give us all of our data at a glance. And then we're going to finish off this nifty looking chart where we'll be able to select the metric that we want and have the chart automatically update based on the metric that we select. And we'll be able to have up to 4 metrics, but you can program this any way you want to have more metrics if you want. So let's get after it. Okay, so we're back and we're going to finish off this template here. I will remind you that if you want to purchase this template and see how everything was built, you can do so at the link in the description below. As well, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel. That really helps me out a lot. And if you found any value in these videos, please just share them on a social media platform and you can tag me in them, and that's really going to help this channel keep going. Anyways, so just as a recap of where we've gotten to, we've created this set and rep planning outline up here, and we're able to enter percentages, and we're able to kind of calculate a relative intensity, and it will automatically color code, and that's going to be useful for us to start to plan out our set and rep schemes. Then over here we have a table here that's going to calculate a bunch of different metrics, and we did this in video SCT 37, and just some things that it's calculating. We're looking at total sets minus the warm-up, total reps, average reps per set, etc. And this sheet's designed so that these tables can be hidden and you can just use it as a standalone tool. So when I'm finished with this sheet, I'll actually hide the 2 tables here, and I'll just want everything at a glance down here underneath, so that this is just a standalone printable sheet that you could use and print off and put in a binder, or you could save the set and rep scheme, or however you want to do it. So what we need to do first is actually pull the data out of the table and put it over here where the different metrics are listed. And that's essentially going to be the same problem as when we pull it over for the chart. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways that we can kind of do that today. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is for total sets, what I want to pull out is, if I go over to the table here, I want to pull out the 8, 10, 10, and 8. And to do this, we're going to use a relatively new Excel function, and I think we've used it in some other tutorials, but it's going to be called XLOOKUP. So what I'm going to type is equals XLOOKUP, and when I open up those brackets, it's going to ask me what's the lookup value. So for me, that is total sets. So I'm going to click on the cell where total sets is, and I'm going to hit a comma, and then it's going to ask me what the lookup array is. And if I just click at the top part of the column here, I want to look in this metrics column in my table. So if I click down there, what you'll see is it's actually going to show me table set data and then metric. And if I take another comma, I want it to find the week 1 value, so I'm just going to click down at the top on week 1, and if I close that off, it's going to give me my 8. Now that's great, but I want this formula to be draggable, and I want it to be pasteable, and I want it to always work. So there's a couple things that I'm going to have to do to it. Number 1, where it's asking me what the lookup value actually is, for us right now it's stored in B21. But the way that this sheet is actually formatted, all of the different values are stored in the B column. So I'm going to lock that in place with a $sign. And when I put that there, what that means is no matter if I drag it left or right, it's always going to reference the B column. If I drag it up and down, it'll change the actual row, 21, 22, etc. But it's always going to look in the B column. So that's the first part. Then the second part is I'm going to lock in this table reference. So it's going to be the same thing as putting a $sign in front of this so that it doesn't move. But to do it for a table, what you actually have to do is double the square bracket on the front, and then you're going to put double dots, and then open the square bracket up again. And we still want to look in the metric column, so I can double click metric and then close it off with double square brackets. So what that's saying is that if I drag it up, down, left, right, it's always going to reference just the metric column in my table. And that's really powerful because it's essentially like putting the dollar signs in front of the table reference. And then the last thing, table set data week 1, 2, we want that to actually change as I drag the formula. So if I hit enter here, you'll see that nothing's changed. It's still showing me the 8. But if I actually drag this across, you can see that it's actually updated all the values, and you can see 8, 10, 10, 8. And we'll know this is working right if I highlight all of these and drag it down. Now it's going to reference 4, 6, 6, 4 for the total sets minus warm-ups. And because of the way that we've actually set up our formula, I should be able to Control-C, copy and paste this, and it should actually change as soon as I paste it in. So you look, it's now referencing total reps instead. And when I hit enter, I should be able to drag this down, and then I should be able to Control-C, copy and paste it here, and copy and paste it here, and here, and here. And it should just work. And because we've set our formula up properly, the formula's worked all the way through. But down here, it's given us a few extra decimals than we want. So I'm just going to convert these to percentages so that they look a lot like what's in our table. So if I just highlight all these and I go up to the top here, it's formatted as general right now, but I can click down here and turn it into a percentage. And maybe I only want 1 decimal place or 2 decimal places. It's up to you. But to do that, right underneath where it says percentage, you can change the number of decimal places however you want. So I'm going to leave it at 1 because generally that's what I would do for programming. And then down here for my INOL guidelines, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to change the number of decimal places down to 2. So with that XLOOKUP formula, it's allowed us to really easily just reference the values out of our table and then pull those values out. So that's a really easy way to do that. And we need to check whether it's dynamic. So if I type in some more sets, you should see that everything's changing, and indeed it is. So it works fine. So that's part 1. Now moving on to part 2 is I actually want to create a spot where I pull out some data down here based on a selection, and then I want to create a chart off of that that looks kind of like this. So what I'm going to do is in these cells right here, I'm going to do a data validation, and I'm going to put a drop-down list in there that's going to allow me to choose any one of the metrics that I'm pulling out. So again, like we've done in so many videos, I'll highlight these cells and I'll go to data, data validation, and I'm going to make a list, and it's going to ask me where I want, and I'm going to select the metric column, and when I click there, it's going to give me the range that exists in. I'll hit enter and then OK, and what you'll see is I'm actually able to pull out any of those values, and I'm just going to put some in there so that when we start to reference things in a second here, it's going to work fine. And then the next thing I want to do is, depending on which one I pick, I actually want to be able to pull out those values out of the table. So we're going to do this a different way, and it's going to be with something we've used before called the filter function. And what I'm going to type is I'm going to type equals filter, open that right up, and what it's going to ask me is where I want to look. And I want to look in my table set rep. Okay, and underneath week 1, underneath week 1, and then it's going to ask me what do I want to include, and I want to include any data, so table set rep, any metrics, and I'm going to lock this in the same way we did before. Sorry. That are equal to, in this case, K35. And I had to type that in because the formula is actually over where I would click on the reference. But what we're looking at is this cell that we put the data validation in earlier. And then I'll close that off. And then if it's empty, I just want a blank, which is double quotations, and I'll close that off. And I'll hit enter. And you're going to see that it's going to pull out that 4. Okay. And because I'm going to lock in the K for the K35, the same way we did before in my formula. So I put a $sign in front of that. So that's going to allow me to actually drag this formula, and I'll hit enter. And I'll drag this over, and it's going to pull out the same values, 4664. And because of the way this is set up, if I drag it down, it should pull out all those values. So that's an easy way to pull these values out. The only problem with this now is if I make this blank, it's actually going to give me this error. And when we go to create this error, or when we go to create this chart, the errors aren't going to look really nice on the chart. So we have to do a little bit more just to fix this up a little bit. So I'll put the total sets back in, and we're going to put some things around this formula. The first thing we want to do is check to see if K35 is blank, and if it's blank, then we want it to be, this cell to be empty. So what we're going to do is wrap this in an if formula. So we're going to put if, and then open up the brackets, and there's a formula called isBlank, ISBLANK, and the value we want to check is $K35 because we want that reference. And I'm going to close this off, and if it's blank, which would mean that equals true, then comma, what I want to happen, because if it's telling me it's blank, I want the cell to be blank, I want double quotations, and then if it's not, I want that filter function to do its job. Enter. Whoops, I just got one more bracket to put in there. Enter. So what that's done now is if it's blank, what it's going to do is just make the whole thing blank. Okay, and because I've set that up properly, I should be able to drag that guy. Then the last thing I want to do is I want to wrap the whole thing in a formula called if error. And what that's going to do is just if it finds any errors of any kind, I just want it to be blank. So if error, quotation, and that's the value that I want. And then at the end of the formula, I'm going to put comma, and it's going to ask me what I want it to do if it finds an error. And again, just leave it blank, and I'll hit enter. The if error function is a really good habit to get into. Because what that does is it just makes the cell blank if there's any errors of any kind in the calculations or anything like that, and it just helps clean up your data a lot. So again, I should be able to drag this the way that I've set up all my references, and you'll notice that nothing changed, and in this case that's a good sign. But what I should be able to do is I should be able to pull out any values, and these automatically change. Now the last thing I want to do is I actually want to create this chart. So I'm going to highlight these cells here because this is where I want to actually create my chart, and I've just outlined it here with a border, and I'm gonna put insert, and I'm gonna put let's see, a combo chart, and it's gonna insert there, and it thinks that's where I actually want the data, but it's not. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna right click on this chart, and I'm gonna hit select data, and I'm going to remove all these series, and I'm going to add a series. So the series name that I want to be is K35, where we've stored our name. I can hit OK, and then the values are going to be stored right here. OK, so you can see we've got our first series there. OK, and I'm going to add all those series now. Average reps per set. Week 1, 2, 3, 4. OK, and then I'm going to add all 4 of my series. And this is a little bit tedious, but it'll make it worth it in the end. Okay, add this one, and then these guys. Okay, and then the other thing is I want the bottom to say week 1, 2, 3, 4. So on the horizontal category, I'll hit edit here, and I want those to reference these cells here. Okay. So now you can see we've got our chart. Now a couple tricks with charts. If I select on the chart, I can go up here to format, and I can choose align, and if I put snap to grid and snap to shape, what I can do is I can actually make it sit right inside of the cells. Okay, and this is what I usually do with my charts. So I'll make my cells how wide I actually want the chart, and then have the chart sit right in there. So it'll look like that. So that's one trick. Okay. Now the second trick is under format, under chart design. You can easily choose a whole different or all kinds of different designs here. Okay. For this chart, because we chose a combo chart, what I can do is I can actually change chart type. Sorry. If I select one of the series and I select change series chart type, it's going to give me a window that looks kind of like this, and I can actually change what I want the chart to be. So for example, I want the first two to be bar graphs, which are called clustered columns, and then the second two I want to be line graphs, but I want them to be line graphs with markers. And I want those actually on a secondary axis. When I hit OK, it makes my chart kind of look like this. And what I've done down here is, instead of actually having the legend as part of the chart, I've actually just put the legend here. So bar 1, bar 2, line 1, and line 2, and I've just made them blue and red. So for example, this is bar 1, and then bar 2, what I would do is I could hit format data series, and it's going to bring a sidebar here, and I'm actually just going to change the color of it. I'm going to make it red. So now that it matches here, and then line 1, which is average INOL, I'm just going to make it something different so I can tell which one it is. Yeah, so this is going to be line 1, and I could click format data series again, and over here, the marker, let's say I want it to be the circle, and I want no fill on it, and I want the border to be blue. So what does that look like? So you can see now it's given us that blue kind of look. And then if I select that series again, the line, I'm going to make the line blue as well. So now it matches what our actual, what we've actually laid out as it's going to be the color. Now we can play around with the markers, and there's lots of different options here. Let's change the marker. No, let's go built-in, make it a little bit bigger. And then fill, no fill. Now let's make it solid fill, we'll make it white in the middle. And that gives it kind of a nice look. And then we'll make the marker, the border, solid line, we'll make it blue, and we'll make it a little thicker. So that's a good look. And then we'll do the same thing down here. This is going to be the red line now, so if I right click, well, I don't have to anymore, but I'll make it solid fill, white, we'll make the marker that circle again, make it a little bit bigger, we'll make the line, the border, we'll make it red, and we'll make it a little bit bigger. Good, and then we'll make the line the red as well. So you can see now it kind of matches our other colors. Now one other trick you might want to do is we can actually change these a little bit. I'm going to just turn the transparency up a little bit on them. So maybe about like 50%. Sorry, I'm going to do it on the fill, my mistake. Solid fill, and then you can turn the transparency up a little bit on them, about 50% or so. Make it blue, and now it gives sort of that bluish color. And then if I wanted to, I could put a border around it that's maybe black, and then make it a tiny bit thicker, and that might help it stand out a little bit more. And then it overlaps here with this red one, so if I do the same thing on the red, maybe I have a solid fill and I give it about 50% transparency, and then a solid line around that's black, make it a little bit bigger, Now you can see this chart starting to look a lot more like the one that we had originally. And there's a lot of other things we could do there. For example, we probably don't need this legend anymore because I have it down below, so I could delete that. I might want to select these, bold them, make them a little bit bigger, maybe black, make that look a little nicer. And you can see the chart, you can kind of start to make the chart look any way you want. Now the last trick that I'm going to show you in this video here is we can actually save this chart as a template. Say that every time we make a chart that's got bars and lines on it, we always want it to look like this. So what I can do is I can actually right click here and put save as template. And what it's going to do is it's going to open it up and we can name that template. I'm going to hit cancel because I'm not actually going to save this one. But then when we're actually making our chart, what I can do is I can put change chart type and I can go to my templates and I can actually select one. I'm going to select the one like I have down here and hit OK. And it's going to automatically change it to match that formatting, which is a super kind of powerful tool if you have dashboards that you're making and you always want your charts to kind of look the same. I'm going to Control Z that to make it go back. But that's just one way that you can make all your charts look the same all the time. So again, just to refresh how we did that, all I did was right click, change chart type, and then I have some saved templates. And I'm going to pick the set and rep chart that I've created, and I hit change the template, and it's going to make it look a lot like the one down here. So there you go. Our set and rep planning tool is finished. I hope this gives you a couple of ideas for projects that you might want to work on yourself. Again, like I said at the beginning of the video, if this video has helped you out, please like and subscribe to the channel. I think there's a bell notification that if you turn it on, you'll always get notified when I make a new video. You can buy this chart on my website. There's going to be a link in the description below. As well, if you share this on social media, that really helps me out. So I hope this video helps you out. If you have any ideas for videos, feel free to reach out. I'm always looking for ideas and trying to create things that help coaches. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.